Iran's brief civil war is over, and Islam is the victor.
In the 1979 revolution, the Shah was out and Iran was taken over by religious hardliners. It meant change for the West.
It's obvious that this upsurge of religion in politics could affect us all.
And big change for Iranian women.
We were for Khomeini, but now we are for freedom.
Modern clothing was banned. Black, head to toe, the new rule. Nazila Fathi was just 9 when the revolution began, forced to wear a headscarf in public. She saw her life, her family, and her country change dramatically. As a correspondent for the New York Times, Fathi told Iran's stories to the outside world, including the 2009 Green Uprising after Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was accused of stealing the election. Covering the protests put her life in danger. So Nazila and her family fled to Canada and later the US. She's written about her ordeal in The Lonely War, one woman's account of the struggle for modern Iran. We met up during a visit back to Toronto.
So you're 9 years old when the revolution happens. We've got a couple of pictures of you from when you were little. How old were you then?
I think this is the summer right before the revolution. I must have been like 8.5. And that's the pool in our housing complex. 400 families lived in this housing complex. And that pool was the center of our life. We loved it. I mean, we thought it belonged to us, and no one could take it away from us.
So this is you just before. This is you after.
That's about a year after the revolution.
Wow.
For a year, we could go to school showing our hair. But by 1981, we had to wear headscarves, and we couldn't show a strand of hair.
And you couldn't swim?
We couldn't swim anymore, no. Girls were banned from swimming in that pool.
You were caught once wearing earrings.
I was caught wearing earrings under my headscarf, which I thought it was my body. It was my private space. I never thought somebody would punish me for wearing something underneath the headscarf.
What happened?
The principal of my school pulled me into her office. She threatened to expel me from university, and she accused me of everything, of trying to beautify myself. She accused me of being a traitor because Iranian men were fighting at the front, getting killed for my honor and the honor of Iranian women.
Why does dress the way you dress, why did it become so important?
You know, I think that's one of the pillars of the Iranian regime, of the Islamic Republic. Women are the walking symbols of the regime. If you go to Iran and if women are not wearing the headscarf and the coat, there's no sign that you're in the Islamic Republic of Iran. You could be in Turkey. You could be in any other Middle Eastern country. But after the revolution, what women wore became the cliche that this is Iran. We became the face of the country.
Many years later, when you had kids, you had a nanny. It turns out your nanny was being employed, not just by you. What was that like for you to realize that someone in your house was watching you?
Well, you know, this might sound weird here, that I was okay that she was spying on me, but when you work and even grow up in a society where you know that you're constantly being monitored, you sort of get used to that mentality. So I was okay that my nanny was spying on us because I thought this was a good thing. I was doing my job. I wasn't doing anything wrong. So she was keeping them informed that I was just doing my job. But what annoyed me and what became almost unbearable was how she felt empowered. And she felt she could dominate our life. She forgot that she was nanny in the house, and she started really treating us like she dominated everything that we had to do.
She flipped the tables on you.
Yeah, she did, very much.
Huh.
We felt we had lost control of our life completely. And that's when I began struggling to fire her, but I couldn't. She wouldn't leave. She felt so powerful just because of what she was doing. And this is exactly what happened in the years after the revolution, that the revolutionaries drew a lot of people from positions that had no power, and they gave them power. And they told them to police the rest of us. And in the beginning, they enjoyed it. And that's what they wanted to dominate the lives of those who had been the middle class before the revolution. And in the beginning, there was a very severe hostility between the two groups until these people gradually moved up. They started relying on their stable incomes from their government jobs.
So she was making more from the state than she was as a nanny.
I found out how much she was making. She was getting 3 times more than what I was paying her.
To spy on you.
To spy on me.
It seems a lot of Canadians involved. This is a woman who means a lot to Canadians. Yeah. Zara Kazemi, she died after being thrown in prison, beaten. Did you know her?
I never met Zahra, but I remember the protests that we were covering, and then a lot of people were arrested, and their families were going outside Evin prison. And Zahra had gone outside Evin prison to take photos of the families, and she was picked up there. It was one of the most horrifying things that happened. She was the only dual national who was arrested and then was killed. I was a dual national. I was an Iranian Canadian. So, I mean, I felt that like my sister had been killed because there were not so many of us in the country then. And somehow I thought dual citizenship gave you some kind of protection. But when this happened, it was as if the regime was sending a message that we don't care about your dual citizenship. We treat you as Iranians, and if you defy our orders, we will treat you like everybody else, and this can happen.
And then there you are out in the streets after being told not to, and you're back out. So it was big decisions that you made every day that you went out and met those people and covered those protests.
Maybe I didn't think about it that way. As I said, the protests were so big, and there was so much hope in the air. And it was the first time that millions of people had poured out on the streets all around the country. There was a time that tens of thousands were coming out. Then a bit later, hundreds of thousands of people were coming out. But by 2009, just one day, spontaneously, 3 million people came out in the capital, only in the capital. And there were people in other parts of the country too. Nobody thought that the regime would confront such huge number of people. I mean, everybody thought this is the time that the regime is going to bow to people's demands. But it didn't happen.
So you kept filing your stories?
I kept on filing my stories.
And then you got a warning.
Yeah, I got a warning from a commander I had met during one of the protests. One day he called me and he said that I should stop going out on the streets because he knew that snipers were given, my picture was given to snipers, and they had orders to shoot me if they saw me on the streets. I thought he was intimidating me because I had received threats like that in the past. I hadn't seen anything that suggested somebody would hurt me seriously. I sort of ignored what he had said. But then one of my colleagues, who was also Iranian Canadian, he was arrested.
Mazir Bahari.
Mazir Bahari. He was arrested a day after he left my home. That was the first alarming sign. And then just a few days later, I was pulling out of my driveway and I noticed that there were many people outside my home. And as I started driving, a car started tailing me. 2 motorcycles pulled up on both sides of my car. And it was at that point that I was really terrified. I went around the block, went back home, and never left my apartment until the night that we went to the airport.
What did it feel like when you got on the plane?
I was crying like crazy because I felt I was betraying people. So I was torn between two very strong feelings of wanting to stay and cover the story and also wanting to protect my children.
How did your kids adapt?
They adapted much more easily. For them, I mean, they missed their grandparents, they missed their life, but very quickly they became Canadian kids. They started speaking English almost within the second week that they were here.
Is it hard though? Because Iran is not portrayed very well in the West. Do they have mixed feelings about their homeland?
Now they do. They were a little bit bitter when we came here about the fact that they were not able to go back and visit their grandparents. And they asked, can we go back? And we said we couldn't because things had changed. They were bitter, but now my son is very much angry about his home country.
He changed his name, right?
He changed his name. He doesn't like to be identified as an Iranian.
So his name is now?
Jack.
That's the most American name you could think of.
Very American.
Does that bother you?
I can understand what has happened, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that as he grows up, he might change his mind.
It's been so interesting to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thanks.
It was wonderful.